Have you ever wondered why the worst people seem to succeed? Why do those who lie, manipulate, and crush others often reach the top, while those who play fair are left behind? Could it be that kindness and ethics are merely obstacles to true power? Friedrich Nietzsche viewed human reality with brutal honesty. For him, the world is not fair. It never has been and never will be. Success does not always belong to the most righteous, but rather to the boldest, those who are unafraid to take control, impose their will, and rewrite the rules of the game. But does this mean we must become ruthless to triumph? Is morality a weakness, or is there a middle path, a way to conquer power without losing our essence? Today, we will explore one of the most uncomfortable dilemmas of human existence: power, morality, and the brutal truth about why the worst seem to triumph. More importantly, we will discover how we can survive and thrive without becoming like them. So, prepare yourself. This conversation will not be comfortable, but it will be necessary. Imagine you are in a large meeting room. In front of you, two types of people vie for the attention of the powerful. On one side, there are those who follow all the rules, work tirelessly, and believe that their talent and dedication will suffice for recognition. On the other, there are those who do not hesitate to manipulate, lie, and crush others when necessary. Now, ask yourself, which group is more likely to reach the top? If we are honest, the answer is troubling. The world is full of examples of unscrupulous individuals who have triumphed over the more righteous. History shows us emperors, kings, CEOs, and politicians who, despite their morally questionable actions, have conquered absolute power. Meanwhile, kind, ethical people with good intentions often struggle to advance. This brings us to a fundamental question: is wickedness rewarded? Is kindness a weakness in the game of power? Friedrich Nietzsche was one of the first philosophers to confront this reality head-on, without comforting illusions. He argued that the world has never been fair, and never will be. The idea that life rewards the good and punishes the bad is merely an illusion created to keep people under control. If we observe nature, we will see that survival does not belong to the most righteous, but to the most adaptive. Imagine a lion and a gazelle. The lion does not wonder if it is fair to hunt. It simply acts because its survival depends on it. As for the gazelle, graceful and peaceful as it may be, it remains at the mercy of the predator. According to Nietzsche, this same principle applies to human society. Those who await moral recognition, like the gazelle, often become victims of those who have the courage to act. But does this mean we must become predators? For Nietzsche, this was not the only answer. He believed that traditional morality, based on submission and obedience, was created by the weak as a means to protect themselves from the strong. This value system teaches that humility is a virtue, that sacrifice is noble, and that we must await divine or social justice. Yet, in practice, these beliefs only keep people in a position of vulnerability. Here arises the paradox. While those who follow these rules believe they are acting correctly, those who transgress them often reap the benefits. Think of the great empires that have dominated history. None of them were built on kindness. On the contrary, they were built by those who understood the mechanics of power and knew how to wield it without hesitation. Nietzsche called this the morality of masters and the morality of slaves. The morality of masters belongs to those who dominate, who create their own rules and impose themselves on the world. The morality of slaves, on the other hand, belongs to those who obey, who await validation from others, and who fear taking control of their own lives. But what if the truth were more complex than that? What if, instead of choosing between being exploited or exploiting, there was a third alternative? The key to understanding this lies in the fact that power itself is neither good nor bad. It simply is what it is. Those who know how to use it prosper, while those who reject it become victims of those who have no scruples. This means we do not need to become tyrants, but we must learn to navigate the game of power without naivety. If there is one thing Nietzsche teaches us, it is that it is not enough to wait for the world to be fair. If we want to conquer our place without giving up our values, we must understand how morality has been constructed and how it can be used against us. The idea that morality could be a form of domination is troubling. From a young age, we are taught that being good, just, and honest is the right path, that virtue will be rewarded, and that ultimately the righteous will triumph. But Nietzsche invites us to look at history and the world around us with a less naive eye. If morality were truly a passport to success, why do so many who follow it end up frustrated, exploited, or defeated? Nietzsche believed that morality was not a universal truth, but a social construct shaped by those in power. For him, there is not just one morality, but the morality of masters and the morality of slaves. The morality of masters is that of the strong, the conquerors, those who do not need to ask permission to exist. They define what is right for themselves, valuing courage, ambition, and self-determination. In contrast, the morality of slaves is that of the submissive, those who fail to impose their will and instead create a value system exalting humility, sacrifice, and resignation. History is full of examples of this phenomenon. Dominated peoples who, instead of fighting against their oppressors, created narratives claiming that true virtue lies in silent suffering and waiting for justice that never came. Religions that preached reward in the afterlife while their leaders accumulated wealth and influence. Political systems that persuade the masses that power corrupts while the leaders themselves do everything to cling to it. What Nietzsche understood is that this morality served as a mechanism of control, a way to ensure that the weak accept their position without questioning it. Does this mean that kindness and ethics are an illusion? Not necessarily, but it does mean that if we follow these rules without questioning them, we risk being manipulated by those who understand the mechanics of power and have no qualms about using them. Those who consider morality as a set of fixed rules often become easy prey for those who know that these rules can be circumvented or broken when necessary. Who has never seen a just and upright person being duped by someone who knew how to exploit their innocence? The problem does not lie in morality itself, but in how it is used. The world is not a place where good and evil are rewarded equitably. It is a space where those who understand the invisible rules have an advantage over those who merely follow what they have been taught. The masters create values that justify their position of power, while the slaves adhere to narratives that keep them trapped in a cycle of submission. The most intriguing part is that many accept this condition without realizing it. They accept jobs that exploit them because they believe it is the right thing to do. They let dishonest people progress in their lives because they have been taught that questioning and confronting is something aggressive. They wait for divine, social, or cosmic justice to correct injustices without realizing that those who do not wait for justice but act are the ones who shape the world around them. Nietzsche challenges us to abandon this naive vision. It is not about becoming a tyrant, but about understanding that the rules we follow are neither natural nor immutable. They are social constructs. If we want power without becoming despots, we must stop waiting for recognition and learn to navigate the game with intelligence. We must understand that what we have been told is right is not always the best path for the life we desire. If we continue to accept morality as an absolute truth, we will always be in a position of weakness. But if we learn to question it and adapt it to our reality, we may find a path that combines strength and integrity. The question is not to choose between being a cruel master or a resigned slave. The real question is, how can we live with power without giving up who we truly are? From childhood, we are taught that good always triumphs in the end. Stories, movies, and religions reinforce the idea that there is a moral order in the universe, an invisible force that ensures those who act justly will be rewarded while the cruel and dishonest will be punished. But as we grow up, we encounter a very different reality. Good people suffer while cheaters prosper. Effort does not always lead to success, and the truth is often stifled by those who know how to manipulate it better. Nietzsche considered this belief in justice as a comforting but dangerous illusion. He drew attention to what psychologists today call the just world bias, the tendency to believe that everyone gets what they deserve. This way of thinking makes us vulnerable because it pushes us to wait for things to resolve themselves instead of acting to change our own situation. The reality is that the world is not governed by an invisible balance of justice, but by interests, strategies, and power. If we look at history, we will see that most great transformations did not occur because the universe conspired for good to triumph, but because individuals and groups decided to act. No revolution broke out because it was just. No empire collapsed because it deserved to. What truly shapes the destiny of individuals and societies is the will to power, the ability to influence, to act, to impose one's vision on the world. Does this mean we must abandon all ethics and become cynical? Not necessarily, but it does mean that if we want to prosper, we must stop waiting for life to be fair. Kindness alone does not guarantee success. Waiting for recognition for good deeds is a sure path to frustration. The world belongs to those who understand that the game must be played with strategy and intelligence, not just with hope. Nietzsche teaches us that rather than lamenting the injustices of life, we must develop our own power. This does not mean being dishonest or cruel, but rather ceasing to depend on a morality that puts us in a position of weakness. The real mistake is not believing that justice should exist, but waiting for it to manifest itself without effort or confrontation. If we want to transform our lives, we must accept this uncomfortable truth. Justice is not a universal principle, but something that must be conquered. If we do not take control of our own existence, someone else will do it for us, and most of the time, it will not be someone who cares about morality or the well-being of others. What truly separates those who command from those who obey? Is it simply a matter of luck, intelligence, or talent, or is there something deeper? A set of psychological characteristics that determine who seizes power and who remains in the shadows. Nietzsche believed that power was not granted, it was taken, and those who take it share specific psychological traits that distinguish them from the majority. Modern studies confirm this idea. People who reach the top often exhibit lower levels of fear and guilt, an increased ability to make quick decisions, and a remarkable insensitivity to the disapproval of others. They do not hesitate, do not wait for validation, and above all, are not paralyzed by conventional morality. This does not necessarily mean they are bad, but rather that they possess a keen instinct that allows them to see the world as it truly is, not as they would like it to be. There is a clear pattern. The powerful are driven by ambition, control, and often a certain emotional coldness. They do not harbor illusions that justice or kindness will be automatically rewarded. On the contrary, they know that the rules of the game are malleable, and that if they do not use them to their advantage, they will be used against them. This does not mean that all successful individuals are dishonest or manipulative, but hesitation and naivety are rarely traits found in those who lead. Fear is one of the greatest obstacles for those who aspire to rise. Fear of rejection, failure, judgment. Nietzsche teaches us that overcoming this fear is essential. The man who waits to be accepted by everyone will never make bold decisions. The woman who fears displeasing others will remain in the background. History belongs to those who do not let themselves be chained by these emotional shackles. But there is an important detail. Power obtained solely through manipulation and fear has a limited lifespan. Many who reach the top in this way end up falling, consumed by their own arrogance or overthrown by those they have exploited. True power, the kind that endures, is conquered not only by force, but also by the ability to build something greater than one's own ego. Nietzsche was not advocating gratuitous cruelty. He spoke of the Übermensch, the individual who transcends the limits imposed by society, who refuses the role of victim and shapes their own destiny. This is not the path of empty manipulation, but of creation, creating something that leaves a real impact on the world. And that is the key to balancing power and ethics. The question is not only how to obtain power, but also how to use it in a way that does not lead to one's own downfall. Those who understand this balance do not merely command, they leave a legacy. Nietzsche saw the world as a constant struggle between those who impose their will and those who submit. But contrary to what many think, he did not advocate that everyone become a ruthless tyrant. His philosophy was not an invitation to cruelty, but a call to transcendence. He believed there was a different path between submission and brutality. That of the Übermensch, the overman, or beyond man. The Übermensch is not just someone powerful, it is someone who creates their own meaning, who does not let themselves be limited by social conventions, religions, or the expectations of others. They do not blindly follow the rules of the game, but they do not use them solely to manipulate others either. Rather than seeking external rewards or recognition, they build their own value system and live in accordance with it, without fear or regret. The problem with tyrants and manipulators who gain power is that their success is often fragile. They rise quickly but fall just as spectacularly. This happens because their strength does not come from within, but from dominating others. The Übermensch, on the other hand, does not need this validation. They do not conquer to oppress. They conquer to create. They transform instead of merely destroying. But how does one become an Übermensch? Nietzsche believed that the first step was to abandon the naive hope that the world operates fairly. This does not mean becoming cynical or cruel, but understanding that no one will come to save you, that there is no guarantee that good will be rewarded, and that if you want something, you must fight to obtain it. The second step is to develop a will to power. But unlike tyrants who seek power solely to control others, the Übermensch seeks power over themselves. They do not act out of fear or a need for approval, but out of a desire to surpass themselves. This means learning to handle discomfort, making difficult decisions, and taking responsibility for their own destiny. The third step is the creation of one's own values. Most people live by following inherited norms, trying to please others or avoiding conflicts. The Übermensch does not allow themselves to be chained by these constraints. They define what they consider valuable and live in accordance with that, even if it goes against societal expectations. But there is a fundamental detail. The Übermensch is not someone who simply rebels against everything and everyone. They are neither a rebellious teenager against the world, nor a tyrant imposing their vision through brute force. They are someone who finds a purpose and creates something new, an idea, an art, a business, a movement, or a new way of seeing life. True power does not come from deception, but from the ability to shape one's own reality. While the weak complain about injustice and the manipulators exploit this weakness, the Übermensch follows their own path without fear of failure and without needing to justify themselves. If the world belongs to those who know how to play the game of power, but tyrants and manipulators eventually fall, how can we find a sustainable path to success without losing our integrity? Nietzsche did not want us to become ruthless predators, but he also despised the idea that we should live trapped in a morality that weakens us. The secret lies in balancing strength and authenticity. The great trap many fall into is believing that there are only two options: to be exploited or to exploit. Many, after becoming aware of the harshness of the world, end up adopting cynicism, thinking that to win, one must deceive, manipulate, and destroy. But this is a mistake. Nietzsche teaches us that true power does not come from malice, but from the ability to create something greater than ourselves. The first step to finding this balance is to develop strategic awareness. This means understanding that the world does not reward the most righteous, but the most prepared. Being ethical does not mean being naive. Many fail because they believe that being good is enough for doors to open, but those who truly prosper know that it takes a combination of emotional intelligence, long-term vision, and the courage to act. Power does not simply fall into someone's hands. It must be conquered. The second step is to abandon the fear of displeasing others. The greatest enemy of success is the need for approval. Many remain trapped in jobs they hate, destructive relationships, or lifestyles that make no sense to them simply because they fear upsetting others. Nietzsche teaches us that only those who free themselves from this mental prison can truly live. The Übermensch does not seek to please society. They transcend it. But this does not mean acting impulsively or aggressively. Sustainable power does not come from brute force, but from respect and influence. The most successful people are not those who crush everything in their path, but those who know how to inspire and lead. This brings us to the third point, the creation of value. Those who merely exploit others may rise quickly, but they always end up falling. True power belongs to those who build something meaningful. This can be a business, a movement, knowledge, art, anything that has a real impact. When you create value, you become indispensable. You do not need to manipulate to stay on top because your presence makes a difference. The final step is to develop emotional self-sufficiency. Nietzsche believed that the greatest strength came from within. The Übermensch does not need external validation because they have confidence in themselves. They do not act out of fear, but out of a desire for growth and self-improvement. This means learning to handle solitude, rejection, and uncertainty without deviating from their own path. The world does not favor the naive, but it also does not reward manipulators in the long term. The secret is to learn to navigate reality with intelligence without giving up one's own essence. You do not need to become a tyrant to succeed. You just need to stop waiting for the world to be fair and start acting with awareness and strategy. If there is one essential lesson to take from Nietzsche, it is that power is not about controlling others, but mastering oneself. When you become unshakable internally, the world ceases to be a threat and becomes a territory to conquer, not through brute force, but through the ability to create, influence, and transform. And that is the true victory. So, we return to the initial question. Why do the worst people seem to succeed? Nietzsche showed us that the world is not fair, and that those who understand the game of power tend to stand out. But this does not mean we must become cold, manipulative, or unscrupulous to succeed. True power does not come from exploitation, but from the ability to shape reality according to one's own will. The great trap of traditional morality is making us believe that simply being good is enough. But history and life show that this is not sufficient. Success does not belong to those who merely wait for recognition, but to those who take initiative, understand the dynamics of power, and use this understanding to create something greater. Nietzsche offers us an alternative between weakness and cynicism, the path of the Übermensch. This concept is not about dominating others, but about surpassing oneself. It involves abandoning the need for approval, creating real value, and developing an unshakable inner strength. The world belongs to those who dare to step out of passivity and face reality with courage and strategy. It is not necessary to be cruel to succeed, but one must be strong. It is not enough to be good. One must be wise. And now the question arises, will you continue to wait for the world to be fair, or will you start writing your own rules? If this reflection has made you see the world differently, then the mission is accomplished. Nietzsche does not offer comfortable answers, but truths that push us to step out of passivity and take control of our own lives. Now, tell me in the comments which idea struck you the most. Do you think it is possible to balance power and integrity, or do you believe the world forces us to play dirty to succeed? Let's exchange ideas. I read all your comments, and before you leave, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't provide ready-made answers, but reflections that can transform your vision of life. Activate the bell, because there is still a lot of content to come. And now, 2 videos appear on the screen. Which one will blow your mind first? There's only one way to find out. Watch and discover. See you there.